Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammi and Nathan Jaeger.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about what makes love a verb, deploying energy in prevention of relationship issues rather than reactively repairing later, and finding time for you and your partner to add fuel to your relationship. But before we get into that, Sammi, what's been fueling you up this week?
Oh my gosh, I did the biggest fuel up of my relationship with myself tank on Saturday.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, it has been an embarrassingly long period of time since I've been on a solo date, considering I host a podcast talking about the importance of spending time on your own. Yeah, so Saturday I had pretty much the whole day to myself to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted.
Because I was fueling myself up playing footy.
That was irrelevant. I was doing whatever I was doing regardless of whatever you was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did one of my favourite things and went to Bunnings and picked out indoor plants and pots to match. So for those of you who haven't ever been to my apartment before, which is most of you, I have pot plants everywhere.
I had some friends come to our apartment the other day and it's like, wow, it's so great. There was pot plants everywhere. So.
Yeah, I think the jungles could grow. I definitely think there's plenty of room for the jungle to get bigger. But it no longer fits in the bath in one shower. So it's multi-stage. But anyway, I love it. They bring me joy. I enjoyed leisurely picking some newbies out to join the collection, join the family. And it was just so nice to not have to be anywhere and just totally take the day how I felt I wanted to spend it in the moment. And I didn't make any plans for myself. I just really allowed myself to feel and intuitively do what I wanted to do. Yeah, so that nourished me. That felt really amazing, and it definitely highlighted that I need to make more time for myself, that white space to be on my own and in my own thoughts. Yeah. What about amazing. You? What fueled you up this week?
Yeah, so as I touched on, I had my first game of footy this week. So it was really nice to kind of get into a bit more of my masculine energy and to get out there and be a bit competitive as well, because I think, quite often I'm not overly competitive or, just kind of going. More timid. Yeah, a bit more timid and just kind of going with the flow. So it was really kind of nice to embrace some of that side of me and then also really nice to head to the pub afterwards and connect with a few really good people.
Hold on, did you take any tackles?
I did. I took a couple of tackles. I might have got done for a high tackle, but that's okay. Unfortunately, we didn't come away with the win, but it was still really nice to be out there and like I said, to be my masculine energy again. But now, here's this week's guest.
Tonight, we've got Laura Silverstein joining us. Laura is an Amazon bestselling author and certified couples therapist. Laura is a licensed clinical social worker and has 30 years in the field helping couples find more happiness. She's a research clinician, speaker, trainer, and writer, and she's best known for her positive action-orientated style. Her new book, Love is an Action Verb, is a relatable, surprisingly humorous relationship self-help book to read alone or with your partner. You can get your copy wherever you like to get your books, whether or not that's Amazon or Audible. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you.
Hey, your resume is impressive and long. So I don't think that bio really did it justice, but in your book, you've got the long list of experience and qualifications and upskilling and all the things that you've done. But I want to go before that. How did you get interested in relationships?
Wow. So my parents are just extraordinary people who really, we grew up in a home where we were really taught about the importance of love, right? Like there was not a lot of do well and succeed and be the best, make the most money as you can make. It was really we were all really taught, and probably taught by example, not by like lessons, of just the importance of understanding the world in a way where you're thinking about everybody. You're not just thinking about yourself. Like, we were always kind of encouraged to be thinking about what might be going on for that person who might have been annoyed at you. What about the people who don't have the resources that we have? What about the people who have more resources than we have and less? And just kind of understanding that we're in the world. My dad was a social worker as well. And then he became a minister. And my mom was a special ed teacher. So I felt like I had really good role models for really seeing the complexity and the interest in sort of human interaction and connection, right? Like, it's so much better to realize that we have a lot more in common with people than we think we do. And I think that was a common theme. I felt really privileged that I had the parents I had. Not many people are so lucky.
Yeah, that's amazing. And a big part of why Nathan and I started Fuel Collective and this idea of living a fueled up life and a fueled up relationship was like, if you've gone out into the world and met your person and you've stepped into love and you've decided that you want to do life with them, but the blueprint that you've got from your parents is not something that you're interested in recreating, and the person you've chosen to do life with, they also don't have a blueprint that they're interested in recreating, like, how do you smush those two together or come up with a whole new blueprint altogether? Because I think, unfortunately, you are the minority who would say and describe their parents and their relationship in such glowing report card.
Right. Exactly. And we all have to look at what our own experiences are and allow ourselves to have our feelings about what we got as well as what we didn't get, right? Like, everybody has their version of the ways in which their needs were not met. And none of us have all of our needs met, right? We all have some of our needs met. And so it's
and
like,
if you did get all your needs met, you'd probably be a spoilt brat who no one wanted to hang out with.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a life process. And it also has to do with, I think, where your journey brings you in terms of, do you want to, what's important? We've got a shot at life and decide where we want to put our energy. And there's no right or wrong way to do that. So for me, I love relationships and they're very, very important to me. But for someone else, they might not want to do that deep work of family of origin. And other people might really see the barriers and be really motivated to dive deep. So there's benefits and risks, there's pleasant parts and unpleasant parts of doing all of the above, right?
Yeah. And you've joined us here on the Date Forever podcast, and we talk about dating yourself and your chosen person forever. What is your relationship status?
So I am married. I will be married. September 1st will be our 20th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. And before that, I dated and learned a lot about heartbreak, and as well as most people do. We were friends, and we sort of did an on again, off again dating for many years. So we had the opportunity to be friends while we watched this person with whom we were already in love, if we're honest with ourselves, but like struggling with partners that we didn't think were worthy for them, and we would, support them or whatever. And finally, we had this difference about geography. I'm from Connecticut. He's from Philadelphia. We're in the States, so that's about 4.5 hours away. So we did long distance for a while. And then, interestingly, so Philadelphia Child Guidance Clinic is a sort of famous family therapy training program. It's like people like Salvador Minuchin and Jay Haley, who my dad studied with, by the way. Like, amazing.
I feel like this is in your blood.
100% in my blood. And I love that. Like, this is so much larger than me. My grandmother was a social worker. Like,
oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
Like, who has
your kids
that?
are doomed.
Seriously.
Or blessed, whichever way you want to look at it.
A little bit of both. A little bit
Written
of both.
in
right?
the stars.
They've got 2 couples therapists as parents. Like, God help them.
So 20 years, that's really amazing. And I want to dig into that a little bit. We'll come back to it. So you're in the relationship space, and there is so much in this passage, right? In this lane. I want to know, like, why did you decide to write your book?
Oh, wow. So, a couple different things all happening at the same time. COVID, which created an immense mental health crisis. So, I own a group practice. I have 9 therapists. We all work together, and we were unable to meet the demand. We just had to send so many people away, people who were in so much pain, right? We had to send, and it used to be like, when you had a client you couldn't work with, and it's part of any business is turning people away, right? If they need help with something that I don't specialize with.
Yeah, wrong fit.
Right? Yeah, right. But in the past, you just had your list of 15 extraordinary people and you're like, oh, you know what? I have the perfect person for you. But lately it's like, you can't refer to that person because they're full, and it's kind of like you're asking everybody's asking favors of each other. So I really, and maybe it's kind of arrogant of me. I think we all have a little bit of healthy narcissism that just like, well, I'm going to
humble
like
confidence.
humble. That, yes, humble confidence. I got to keep that. I like that. This idea of maybe I can reach people who need to learn this information, who may not have the resources for therapy, who may not have access to therapy for any number of reasons. Maybe their partner isn't motivated. Maybe their partner is not as committed to self-growth as they are. So I really wanted to write a book, and I made a commitment and I did it. My dad, as you already know from talking to me for 2 seconds, just was a huge person in my life. He was getting ill, and I think that's what propelled me to finish it. So he passed. He was alive when I started it, but had passed before I finished it. And I think that was a real motivation for me to keep a legacy going of love, like love. We just, with all the racial tension, with all the political tension, like we just have to send a message of love. And I know that sounds super preachy, but like I'm sappy. I believe
I think you're preaching to the converted already, so it's totally okay. So I'm sorry to hear about your dad, and It's interesting writing a book. I am doing that this year, and I know quite a few people. Thank you. And I'm telling more people so that I've got a wider accountability circle. So like I've said it on the podcast quite a few times now. So there's people asking me like, how's the book going? But I think there's this interesting thing about like taking your ideas and your thoughts and the way that you see the world and putting them into a book. Like that legacy will live past you.
Right.
Like it will, someone will be able to pick that up off of someone's bookcase well after you're gone, Laura.
Right? Let's hope.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that one of the things that prompted you to do it was an ending of life and an ending of legacy.
Right. And a perpetuation of a message.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Laura, your book is called Love is an Action Verb. So can you tell us what that's actually about?
So there's a lot of things that we can do with our partner to work on a relationship. And what I did was I pulled out of everything that we do in couples therapy, I pulled out the skills-based parts of it, the action-oriented issues. So yes, we need to be proactive in taking care of our relationships the same way we have to take care of a plant and water it and like cut off the dead parts and make sure the light's right. So there's a lot of things that go into, I think, just not only finding, there's a lot of in the movies and all of that, there's so much about like finding love, but it's also what do we have to do to keep love? We don't just find it and then, oh, good, like check off that box. Now we need to buy a house. It's like that's a living, growing organism that needs to continue to be fed. So what I did was I took the aspects of what I do and put them in action-oriented items that you can do on your own, right? So some of the things, like if you're working on trauma and how that relates to intimacy in one's sex life, like that is not something to do in a book, or like deep attachment styles with your parents. Like that's not something like that's the same for everybody. So, but there are many things that are just concrete, good, healthy habits that everybody can do, and that we know from the research, it works for many, many people. The highest percentage, it works for whatever percentage. All the skills that I teach are evidence-based just because I believe in, I have never done any of my own research. So it's my job to kind of make sure that what I'm telling you is not just coming off the top of my head or from my own marriage. So the skills in it are really focused on what one person can do, even if they don't have their partner's cooperation, to be sort of working on their 50% and showing up. Like, I like to think of it as sort of living your best relationship, showing up as the best version of yourself, so that when you enter your aspect of the relationship, you're doing your best. Your partner might respond to you, is more likely to respond to you in a positive way, but there's no guarantee. But at least people can, if they're feeling frustrated that their partner is not maybe doing what they want them to do, it's so much more satisfying to say, okay, well, what can I do? Instead of just, one of my chapters is like, what to do while you're waiting for your partner to change, right? It's like so frustrating. It's frustrating when you're waiting for somebody else to change. But then if somebody says, oh, well, this is what I can do, or even if it's reading a magazine in a waiting room, like, it's so much better to do something than to wish somebody else was doing something.
Yeah, that's like the perfect segue into my next question. So we know that there are couples, or that there's a one half of a couple who listen to our show, and they have tried to gently and maybe a little bit more forcefully encourage their partner to listen to the show as well. And I think that's just one example of, like, someone's got a stronger appetite for, like, hey, this is good, but our relationship could be better. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate when there's one person who wants to spend all Sunday afternoon in the garden making it bloom, and there's someone who, like, wants to water it kind of occasionally?
That is the question. That's the $1 million question right there, right? Because of course, everybody has differences of how they want to spend their time and what feels important. And everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, like, we never want to say everybody, but most people, like, value their primary romantic partner, and they love them, and they want them to feel respected and all of that, and loved. But the way that they feel motivated to do that might be different, right? So for some people, it might be more action oriented, and they might say things like actions speak louder than words, or like reading a book or listening to a podcast isn't necessarily how I show my love. And I think that we have to be generous with ourselves and with our partner for what the degree to which today is the day, or this is the time that I want to work on my relationship. Because if you think about it, it's like there's 4 quadrants. There's like time that I want to work on my relationship, time that I just want to be living life, whether it's reading a fantasy novel or doing work or whatever. And then there's time my partner wants to be working on the relationship, and times when my partner wants to be living their life. So there's like only that 25% that both people are feeling exactly the same way at exactly the same time. And it can be very frustrating because it's like, oh, I'm watching this podcast and I wish you would watch it. And it's kind of like, well, maybe your partner does value your relationship and want to join that podcast. But right now, maybe there's something in their life that's a little bit more important. So it would be helpful for everybody to be trying to come a little bit closer to the other partner, not drag your partner to you, right? So if I'm saying, oh, like, what is it that's going on for you right now that this podcast doesn't feel important? And it turns out that I have a conversation with my partner, I learn that they're really stressed out about work, right? Then they're going to feel more understood by me. Instead of me trying to say, please watch this podcast, like, or listen to it. Like, I'm saying, what's going on? Like, I've invited you to do it. Like, what's important to you right now? And the idea is, if you do that, that it creates a culture of generosity, so that maybe my partner then, when they say, oh, like, wow, that was so nice that you were listening to me, talking to me about my stress, nothing about the relationship, nothing about your needs, but you still reached out to me and took care of me. And that the hope, and we don't do it tit for tat, but the hope is that then there will be times where I ask for what I need and my partner gives it to me, because we're creating that norm in our relationship of generosity instead of persuasion.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm only halfway through your book, but the quadrants and the way that you've described it in your book, I mean, like, you can buy a book for not a lot of money. And this fabulous woman here on this show has spent her entire career talking about relationships. Like, go invest in the book. Like, just go do it. because it's pretty amazing that someone will take all of their years and decades of knowledge and put it into a book.
Oh.
And to make it available. So yeah, like even just that simple concept of going, okay, well, we've both got our career and our businesses that they need attention. I need to sleep at some point. I need to shower and exercise and move my body. Yeah. And I need to be a dynamic, interesting human outside of this relationship. And I've got my friends and my family and my network that is separate to you and my partner. And then from that, whatever is kind of somewhere there, let's like hypothesize how many hours that might be a week that you've got left as like free time. And then you're suggesting that even only of that free time, you might actually land in that quadrant 25% of the time. Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy when you think about it. Yeah. And I took this from sort of this concept of good enough parenting, of like parents being able to just like be kinder to themselves when the fact that they can't meet their baby's needs 100% of the time. Sometimes the baby's in the crib kind of like reaching out and it's the middle of the night and they don't have a parent there that's making eye contact and like doing that primary bonding. But it happens the next morning, right? So it's like being able to just realize what you not minimize those moments of connection that you do have, like to value them and amplify them is going to be more productive than feeling bad, blaming yourself or blaming your partner for the moments that the world is not lining up. Both people don't have availability at the same time.
Or rather than trying to force those moments to be something when if you're not in the right headspace, then they're probably not going to be the moment that you're expecting it to be anyway.
Well said, Nate. And right. And then it's like just a reinforcement of your preconceived belief that your partner is really not that interested in what you have to say anyway, because if you pull them in and force them to do something because you really are saying like, this is really, really important to me. And then you're going to feel increasingly frustrated if it seems like their energy is half there. But you kind of already knew that their energy was going to be halfway there because they're telling you like, now's really not a good time. So that persuasion backfires.
So what's your advice in that sort of scenario? Like, would it be to, I guess, obviously have a constructive conversation and say, look, I'm not really in the headspace or I'm not in the place to really spend a lot of time and have some quality time with you. Can we schedule it in the future? Is that kind of the approach that you would normally take?
Yeah, brilliant. Exactly. Like word for word what you said. That's exactly right. Like, hey, I really want to talk to you. Like, when's a good time? What's going to work for you? And that way, I mean, that's why therapy works, right? Or going to a personal trainer. It's because everybody has scheduled it. They know that they're going to be in a place where their phones are off and they're giving their partner their undivided attention. It's by scheduling that time, you are making it more likely that there's not the misunderstanding that one person is like, wait, I finally had this hour and I was planning to do my taxes in that hour. And like, so there's always competing needs. But if it's like, oh, when is a good time? Then you're negotiating when's the good time and it's setting you up for success.
Yeah. And I think it's that understanding of like, what does showing up for your relationship actually look like? Because my appetite for personal development and self-development and growth and learning is quite high. Like I will, if you look through my Audible books over the last 5 years, it's probably like 80% personal development.
Yeah.
And then the other 20% is business.
Books as well.
Like, yeah. And I like growth is one of my highest values. It's also one of my highest needs. I really don't enjoy the sensation of feeling stuck. And the way that I avoid feeling stuck is by growing and evolving. But Nate's appetite for personal development, growth, evolution, not quite the same.
It sounds like
not stagnant.
Not stagnant.
But
Not stagnant. But we are not, if I'm driving that personal development car, I'm at like 100 Ks an hour. Nate's probably more like 40 in the school zone, maybe. Like, and I admittedly, like that drives me crazy sometimes. But it also means that his ability to derive joy from things and just enjoy things the way that they are, he's so much better at that than me. Like, as opposed to me wanting things to be better or different or how could this be better all the time. But we came to a head. It's probably like almost 5 years ago now where I was on a like really steep growth trajectory in all areas of my life. I was working with a coach. on a few different things that I really wanted to improve on in my professional capacity and leadership and developing some more emotional literacy and those kind of skills. I was in a working environment where I got promoted 3 or 4 times in a very short period of time. And the business that I was working in, I was surrounded by people who were also on steep growth trajectories. So I was moving at probably more than 100 kilometers an hour in that phase of my life. And it was sort of 3 years. And I feel like I did like a decade's worth of growth in those 3 years. But it meant that I was moving really quick and Nath was staying very still. And it was really hard for us to stay connected because I felt like I was evolving as a person so rapidly that he didn't really even know who I was or who I was becoming. So I would love to hear your thoughts on if there is someone in a relationship who's one person's going through, they're doing some inner work, they're doing some healing, they're doing some digging around, they're investing in themselves and what they want to do, and the other person hasn't quite arrived there yet. Any wisdom for Sammi and Nath 5 years ago?
Aww. Well, first off, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's good for everybody who's listening to this to just be reminded that even these marriages that look so like perfect and wonderful, like you guys obviously are like working so hard in your relationship, but everybody's got their challenges, right? Everybody does. And I think that's the brilliance of two people coming together, is that they grow at different speeds. And it's like this amazing thing that happens. And I think it happens in natural systems too, where it's like there's one grounding, like the earth needs the ground and there needs to be growth, right? Those things, I think they're probably more interconnected than you realize, right? It's like, is Nate's ability to experience joy at a higher level and maybe be more comfortable without that movement, right? That
very patient, very calm, very serene person. Balances out my chaotic energy.
It's right. And I can relate to that 100%. My husband, like I move a mile a minute. Like I just get a lot done in the day. And my husband is just like able to kind of give me the perspective of like, is that how you want to be spending your time? Just because sometimes when I move so fast, everything seems equally important. And he's sometimes the voice of reason for like, or not. Like sometimes people just sit on the couch and they watch TikTok for like an hour. Like
that's you too.
That's
though.
Also me. I swing from both ends of the spectrum, and I'm like, oh, it's been an hour, and I've been on TikTok. If you ask me to sit down and watch a 1 hour video, no way.
I'm on TikTok
an
now,
hour
you guys.
In 1 to 3 minute increments. I'm there.
Right. That's that personality. Yeah. I'm your soul sister. Yeah, I get it. But so I think sometimes when things feel polarized, they're actually counterbalancing each other.
Yeah. I mean, like for us, that was definitely I would say it's like the scariest time in our relationship. Like we got together in 2007, married in 2012. So we'll be celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary this year, and we're like in our early 30s. It's pretty weird. But I definitely feel like that period of time where we were growing at such different speeds and was definitely like, oh crap, like, are we going to make it? Like, are we going to be able to navigate this? Because I like who I'm becoming and I don't want to slow my roll for you to try and keep up with me. But I felt like I was growing and the gap was getting bigger.
And how did that play out if you don't? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask you guys questions.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like my couples therapist, like I can't. Like,
I need to know.
Can you tell me more about what happened next?
Well, I will say it imploded and exploded at the same time.
Yeah, it did.
And you can take it from here because this is mostly, it was your journey that then started from that implosion, explosion.
Yeah. There was a situation essentially, and I basically just realized that I was not in the captain's seat of my own life, that I was just letting things happen to me rather than me actually driving my own life or driving anything really in our lives. Like not driving anything in our relationship or anything either. I was letting Sammi be the captain. And so, I guess that's what kind of kickstarted my own personal development and personal growth journey. And that really kind of enabled me to realize that I was just letting life happen to me and that I was missing out on lots of things as well because I wasn't actively pursuing the things that I wanted to pursue either.
Right. so nice to, as much as I hear you saying it imploded, it also sounds like it was like that needed to happen so that you could both kind of
Yeah.
learn and grow. And what I love is like hanging in there with each other and knowing what was going on so that you could both survive and be stronger. Because my hypothesis is that you both learned from that and grew from that, and your relationship is now different. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was absolutely like it was the worst moment and the best moment at the same time.
Right.
And like to wrap some like visual context around that, like I walked out of the house with my phone and didn't come back for quite a few hours. And Nath didn't know where I was, and my phone had gone to do not disturb mode. And Nath had been trying to call me and I wasn't answering because I wasn't getting the call. So I think I would never have done that on purpose. Like I never would have intentionally avoided him or evaded his calls and created panic, but it happened by divine intervention. And I think, honestly, I think that scared Nathan enough to be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
This is really serious. I don't know where she is. I don't know when she's coming back.
Yeah.
Like,
and so maybe you were both.
This is not good.
Yeah. A little bit of a wake up call, huh?
Yeah. But that kind of leads me to something that I've heard you say a little bit about this idea that we kind of have two narratives. And you'll see this in like any sort of relationship Facebook group, or when a group of people get together and they start talking about a reality TV show that's centered around relationships. And it's kind of like option 1, dump them.
Yes.
Option 2, suffer with it.
Yep.
But you believe there's a third option.
Right. Right. It's kind of like, what if you work at it? What if you realize that all of your needs are not going to get met? And I feel like there's this pendulum, right? Of like on the one hand, it used to be sort of this belief that people were preaching around just like loyalty, stay with your partner. And I feel like now there's a little bit more of a narrative around be true to yourself. You don't have to put up with that, like kick that person to the curb. And there's a lot of diagnosing on the internet with like people saying this person is having this diagnosis, therefore like you need to protect yourself and leave immediately. And the reality, or if somebody cheated on you, you need to leave immediately. Now, I am not saying that there are not times where it's absolutely like unhealthy relationships people need to get out of. And there are abusive relationships, and that is real and true. But there are also relationships are messy and people are human and they will let you down. And so much of what I say to my couples on a regular basis is you need to kind of expect your partner to let you down. And that feels really defeatist and like against all the personal development books that you're talking about, right? Because the message is like, be true to yourself and your needs are important. But like, we have to be realistic about like, what does that mean? That we're disappointed and we want our partner to talk about our feelings a little bit more. Like, can we hang in there a little bit and figure out how you're going to negotiate that? So I talk about speaking truth with kindness, right? There's like speaking your truth, like standing up against injustice, which I believe in, which is a different conversation, right? But that idea of like saying no to power. But if you speak to your partner with that kind of vivacious energy that can come across as aggressive, then you're ending up in a fight and you're actually less likely to get your needs met, right? Because then your partner will then feel attacked and blamed. And what happens when people feel attacked and blamed, they get defensive. So that develops the sort of classic attack defend cycle that I'm sure you guys talk about a lot. So to answer your question, it's like, yes, you have the option to just grin and bear it. Yes, you do have the option to leave, but let's not forget option 3 of what can I do? What can I do to make this a better relationship? The more you're focused on what you wish your partner was doing differently, the more you're focused on the thing that you have no power over.
Yeah. And like separating, like Nathan and I have had proximity to quite a few friends now who have gone through separations and in some cases divorces with the people that they thought they were going to do life with forever and ever and ever, that they thought that was their person. And then they've hit an obstacle or a series of obstacles and hurdles that they haven't been able to overcome. And they've gone for we're out, we're not doing this. And the amount of time, money and energy that it takes, the resources that it takes to dismantle a relationship, whether or not you do that constructively and with two adults collaborating to deconstruct, or one or both of you just fucking burns it down with really destructive behavior, still takes a lot of time, money, and energy.
Yes.
And then once you've exited, you've got time, money, and energy to heal, and then time, money, and energy to invest into, hopefully, a new relationship. And I always think, just imagine if you deployed all of that energy, time, money, resourcefulness into building the skills that you needed to create a healthy, happy, and thriving relationship. Like, I don't believe that that's always possible, and I don't believe that people should be together forever and ever and ever, because once upon a time that was a good decision. And I do believe that some relationships should come to an end, but I think it's a lot less than what actually happens.
Yeah. Well said. Really well said. And I think the earlier you start that, the less expensive and exhausting and painful it is, right? So people that are doing pre-commitment education, where they're taking classes or they're reading books together, they're doing little workbooks, and they're getting in the habit of having a evening check-in for 10 minutes every night, right? That is like the difference between doing laundry every day versus waiting and trying to do it all in a month.
Once a year.
Once a year. When I had babies, I learned there's this like laundry by the pound. You can drop it off and they literally will wash it and fold it. It's amazing. $1 a pound, worth every dollar.
With newborns, I bet. But
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
we laugh, right? And we say, like, you would never let your dirty undies build up for a whole year. And yet people do this in their relationship. They let these little, like, resentful moments and experiences and conflicts and things and really build up for sometimes not just a single year, but ongoing years. So, yeah, that's got a really funny visual to it.
It does.
But the thing, I just want to say one more thing about that, right? So like we do these intensives that are like 2 to 4 days, like drop everything and take 2 days off work, send the kids to the grandparents, and like do couples therapy really deep down. The people that are doing that are usually people that are in an absolute crisis because it's a lot of money and it's a lot of time, right? So that investment of like, we need to save this marriage because we're really looking face to face at the hard truth of like our lives are intertwined and I don't want to get divorced. Like very few people, like that's what they want. But you've got such a good point because it's like, even if you were to just do a little more than you think you need to do now, right? Like that's like compounding interest in terms of how much you'll benefit.
Yeah. Nate says it really well, like that you either deploy the energy proactively or reactively.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well said.
Yeah.
It's the electrical engineer.
Yeah, I love that, right? Because the reactive, and the thing about the reactive is that that's where there's unnecessary hurt. Like there's necessary suffering in the world, right? Like there's rupture and repair. But if you have like, if you don't do the repair at time 1 or time 2 or time 3, then it's like so much more painful. And then you have the conflict of the conflict of the conflict, as opposed to just like, yeah, we got to deal with this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's potentially a catastrophic issue down the track, whereas it could have just been a little leak initially, whereas this is a burst main and you've got water spraying everywhere and you need,
Can't get it under
lots
control.
of resources to fix it up rather than just, tiny little fix.
I like that metaphor. Like caulking is cheaper than repaving.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Laura, this has been such a beautiful chat, but I would like to circle back to your 20-year marriage and ask, like, what are some of the practices or habits that you've got in your own relationship, whether or not it's daily, weekly, monthly, annually, to keep your relationship fueled up?
So I'm really, really lucky because I have a partner who's equally committed to relationship health. He's a couples therapist. We both train in the same model of couples therapy. We met in a group training program. So we really...
Your tool belts are full.
Our tool belts are full, but that's
Still human.
the one thing that we don't do the things that we tell you guys not to do.
Yeah.
But the things that work for us, I mean, we know like when there's an argument, we have these booklets. We have these booklets that we use with our couples and they're in our bedside tables. It's how do you do a repair? And basically, so if we have an argument, we take a timeout. And so we do have arguments, and I am very passionate and my husband is very logical. So like I end up looking like the crazy person because I'm like, ah! And like if any of my couples saw me, they'd be like, what? You're not supposed to be doing that. Like,
let me coach you for a minute.
So the importance of a timeout is something that we very, very much believe in because you're in diffuse physiological arousal, the fight and flight response. You're not able to access your frontal cortex. Like all of that is just like, we don't have to be converted into why it's so important to take a break when you start to see the tide rise and people doing and saying things that they're going to regret. And so we take a time out and we ask for it. And we've had to work on this because there are times where one of us will ask for a timeout and the other person just kind of wants to get the last word in. Like, okay, you can take a timeout because you obviously need it. Like,
savage. Oh, Laura, I think that's super important to share though. Like, and if we can probe further, like what's the thing in your relationship that just like is unresolvable that comes up all the time?
Right. There's all couples have their unresolvable issues. And so for us, it's that we're very stylistically different in terms of like just pacing. So I think I alluded to this before and I was joking around about it, but it's a really big challenge for us. So it's like, I just do a lot. I'm a doer. I'm a mover. I have this entrepreneur side and I'm like doing all of these things. And so for me, and I really have to work hard to realize that what my husband brings to the table is not that, right? Like he's not that fast paced doer. He's the one that kind of will need to keep me in check to be like, all right, I see that you love this like washing machine, but let's read the reviews and let's like maybe not buy it today. Let's sleep on it. Maybe let's look at some,
Oh no. You've described an almost exact thing that happened to us. Except it wasn't a washing machine, it was a fridge.
Yeah.
And the engineer wanted a little more information. Is that
yeah,
right?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted somewhere to put our food.
Right. Yeah. So that pace of like, we don't have time. We're right here at the store. Let's buy the thing. And because I got other stuff to do tomorrow. And it's kind of like that pacing thing is like, I need to be more patient with him. He needs a lot more sleep than I do. And so that's hard for me sometimes because I'm up 5 a.m. And so that's fine. I love being up at 5 a.m. That's when I write. That's like, I'm just a morning person. But then I have to remember, like, he just needs more sleep biologically. It's not his fault. It doesn't help me to get mad at him because he's still sleeping when I wish he was awake having breakfast with me. So we understand that and we've learned to work with it. But it is something that it's kind of like, oh, there's our thing. That's our issue.
Thank you for sharing. Because like you said, like I think it's important to know that even people who are experts, literal relationship experts, are still human.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And like two people, your stuff and my stuff is going to rub up against each other and sometimes create friction.
And two people with two different blueprints, aren't going to be identical. And that's what makes relationships interesting as well.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then I think back to like when I was dating and when I did my little like list of like, what are my deal breakers? I was very conscious. Like, I want somebody who's emotionally intelligent, intellectually intelligent. I'm just very attracted to brilliant guys. But that was really, really important to me. And having somebody who was handy was not on my list. Right. So then when I wish he was a little more handy or a little more like jump up and do things, I remind myself, those are not my core values. Like, I chose the things that were the most important things to me. I needed somebody that could talk about their feelings because I teach people how to do that for a living. I did not want to teach my life partner that. I wanted somebody who would be challenging me in that way. So that's, I do remind myself of that when I get like frustrated by some of those gridlock issues.
And you can outsource some of those things anyway.
Yeah. Well, right, exactly. Like if I just work a little bit harder, we can pay somebody to do this and it's a win-win. And you can't outsource emotional intelligence, but like I said, laundry by the pound.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think that that's so true, right? And you fall in love with your partner for the way that they are, and then the way that they aren't frustrates the crap out of you. And then you go, well, if they were the exact carbon copy of me, that would probably drive me crazy as well. So appreciating the yin and the yang. Yeah. So Laura, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a great conversation. I appreciate you giving some time and some insights, and I really do want to encourage everyone to go check out your book. But to say thank you for joining us, we've given a school uniform to a student in Cambodia. So this is pretty special because in Cambodia, you can go to school and school is free, but the family has to buy the uniform. And that's a barrier for a lot of families. So with the school uniform comes education. So thank you so much for making that possible, and thank you for joining us.
That's amazing. What a wonderful thing you're doing. I missed that on your website or whatever. I love that. Thank you for doing that.
We really do believe that better relationships are going to help us to create a better world. And this is just one way that we can do that.
Love that.
No worries. So Laura, if people want to get your book or learn a little bit more about what you do, how should they connect with you?
So here's my book. It's called Love is an Action Verb. It's on Amazon. It's now in Barnes and Noble, which is awesome because people weren't able to get it in Australia. I had people on my mailing list saying, I need it in Australia. And then
I've got it on Audible.
Awesome. But now I've gone a different route as well and added to Amazon. So now people should be able to order it, and it should be able to be anywhere. So it's in Barnes and Noble as well now. It's on Kobo and Nook and all the
places.
Things. Yeah. And apparently, and I have to check this out. And if anybody listeners want to check this out, it would mean so much to me. But I think that you can go to a bookstore and say, hey, I really want you to order this book, Love is an Action Verb by Laura Silverstein, and that they can now order it because it's on something called Ingram Spark. So I'm independent. I'm an independent author, which means that these things really matter to me, that it makes a difference for people to be kind of seeking out my book because it doesn't have the backing of some huge corporation.
Big publishing house or anything like that.
Right.
And I think this, as a fellow writer, I'm going to start calling myself that. Yeah, the self-publishing thing is just a different game, different beast. So congratulations for putting it out in the world. And but so other than the book, what's the next best way for people to connect with you? Or I assume that maybe if you've got capacity, someone in your practice might be able to see people.
Yeah, so only here in Pennsylvania. We're pretty full. It's a little hard to get an appointment, but I also do workshops. I do webinars and stuff like that once a month. I do like communication training webinars. And I have some online courses and stuff. But laurasilverstein.co. So C-O, not C-O-M. That's not me misspeaking. Laura, L-A-U-R-A, Silverstein, silver like the metal, S-T-E-I-N, .co, C-O. And on there is like my blog, my writing. I have some links to some free books that I just give away that are sort of mini guides to questions to ask your relationship, self-assessment kinds of things. I just joined TikTok. So I'm all
right. I'm gonna go look for you, Laura.
It's Laura's Love Advice on TikTok.
Amazing.
It's fun, like little 7-second relationship tips. This is my mission now. Like I feel like we're doing so much around like helping people repair their relationships, and now I want to get just lots of like simple little early information to people that maybe just started dating or are trying to decide whether they want to commit, like those kinds of things vis-a-vis what we were saying before about the caulking versus the plumbing.
Repiping. Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Laura. And it's nice to share a mission with you.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for doing this work and for you guys being so committed to your own relationship as a model for all of us to be. Like, I love that you're willing to kind of share not only like the tips and the tricks of what works, like, but you're willing to go vulnerable and talk about the challenges, because I think that's really what helps people.
Yeah, our stuff is messy. It's awesome and beautiful, but also messy.
Yeah.
It always is.
Thanks, Laura.
Alrighty.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.